Okay. Hello. I'm here today to present to you a brief synopsis of a very important character in biblical history named Jacob or Yaakov, I believe in Hebrew. When he was born, he was named Jacob in Canaan or modern day Palestine, occupied Palestine, Israel, the West Bank, and that in those disputed territories, but the ancient land of Canaan. And he died in Egypt. But the Torah tells us that he was buried in the cave which Abraham purchased, that is now called um, the Cave of the Patriarchs, I believe, in the West Bank. Let's see here. Yeah, it says here that they buried Israel in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought. So he was born in Canaan and he died in Egypt. Okay. Well, the story of Jacob begins with his father Isaac. So Abraham begot Isaac, Isaac begot Jacob. Isaac's mother was Sarah, and she passed away soon after the binding of Isaac. It got to the point where Abraham wanted his son to marry, and he decided he was going to send her to go find a wife amongst his people so that he wouldn't marry a Canaan woman. So Isaac was sent by Abraham to go find a wife. An interesting part of this is a servant was sent. Abraham was advanced in years, and he sent a servant out of the Canaanite region. He wanted to go find a wife in his native land. And when he gave special instructions to this servant on what to look for. Let's see, I believe this is when Rebecca, Jacob's mom, was watering camels. She watered the servants' camels. And an interesting fact is that to claim Rebecca as Isaac's wife, the servant put a nose ring into her nose that weighed 1.7 grams. That would probably be heavy enough to almost pull her nose down. That's highly unusual for our culture, but apparently it was not back then. It says, when the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold nose ring weighing half a shekel and two gold bands for her arms, 10 shekels in weight. So what we're talking about, a lot of gold here. And then apparently this was a common thing because now Rebecca had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out to the man at the spring when he saw the nose ring and the bands on his sister's arms. And when he heard his sister Rebecca say, "Thus the man spoke to me," he went up to the man who was still standing beside the camels at the spring. And this is how they come to some sort of agreement on marrying Rebecca to Isaac. So, long story short, Rebecca marries Isaac. Um, like many times in the scriptures, this woman who married Isaac could not have children. So Isaac pleads to God for children. And Rebecca, God hears Isaac and he opens Rebecca's womb and he has this little boy, Jacob. Jacob was known as a crafty little bugger. He sort of had a reputation as being crafty and cunning and this type of thing. And goodness gracious. The first record we have of Jacob being rather crafty is when he buys his brother Esau's birthright. Esau was out hunting. He was very hungry, and Jacob had stayed home, as was his custom, and he had made delicious venison stew, some type of stew with wild game in it. And Esau smelled it and saw it and said, "I need that. I'm going to die if I don't eat." And he sold him his birthright. He said, "What good is this birthright if I'm dead?" So Esau sells his birthright. "Yes, look, I am about to die. What good then is this birthright to me?" Then Jacob said, "Swear to me today." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. So Jacob was the younger. If we step back a little bit, when Rebecca got pregnant, it says, "Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And God granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her." And she said, because there were twins inside of her. But the children struggled together within her, and she said, "If all is well, why am I like this?" So I guess she wasn't doing so good, and she felt some turmoil and maybe some sickness, and she was having quite the time being pregnant and giving birth and labor. So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two people shall be separated from your body. One shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." So the older was Esau. He came out first. Thus, when her days were fulfilled to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. Now the firstborn came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so she named him Esau. Afterward, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, so she called his name Jacob, Yaakov. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah bore them. And this would have been the land of Canaan, because Isaac never left Canaan, as the legend goes, and according to the scriptural text, um, Isaac never left Canaan, so Jacob would have been born in Canaan. And let's see here. So the first thing he did that was a little crafty was he sort of connived his way in getting Esau to sell his birthright while he was very hungry. That probably didn't please Esau once he fulfilled his desire to eat and realized he didn't have a birthright anymore. 1 second here. Okay. Esau hated Jacob, and Jacob got a reputation as a trickster. The ultimate was in chapter 27 when Jacob tricked his old father. Isaac was getting old, and his mom, Rebecca, had an idea that Jacob would make a tasty stew, put on some camel's hair, pretend to be hairy like his brother Esau while his brother Esau was out hunting. So Jacob makes a special stew that's similar to the kind that Esau makes. He puts on some camel's hair, some sort of hairy garments, so that he feels to his father, whose eyesight is feeling, as if he is rather hairier than he normally is, like his brother was this hairy, redheaded guy. And they basically trick Isaac into giving the blessing that he's supposed to give to Esau to Jacob. I don't know if this is quite a great decision. Apparently, this was part of some sort of God used this for a greater purpose, and everything turned out all right in the end. But at this moment, Esau is quoted as hated Jacob. And Jacob Rock got this solidified amongst his family reputation as a trickster. Rebecca sends Jacob to Laban in Mesopotamia, and Isaac also sends Jacob to the house of Bethuel to get a wife from the daughters of Laban. as recorded in the text. Along the way, Jacob has a vision of a ladder, or possibly it says, now Jacob went out from the well of oath and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. Then he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven, and there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. So I imagine that it's a vision or a dream of a ladder going to heaven and angels going up and down this ladder is what it seems. This is the Septuagint here. So the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. Do not fear. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your seed. Also your seed shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. And in you and in your seed all the tribes of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. FYI, this is the Septuagint version I'm reading. The other version I read about the nose ring is from the Masoretic text. That's the JPS, Jewish Publication Service Bible. This Septuagint is the Orthodox Study Bible, is what I'm getting that from. So I might switch back and forth. There are some major differences in the two. So I just kind of switch back and forth. So Jacob tricks him. Isaac sends him away. Jacob sees the ladder. Oh, yeah. So Jacob goes to his uncle Laban's property, and he's looking for a wife. This is after the ladder incident. And who does he see? He he sees a woman, Rachel, and it doesn't take him very long. But apparently, he goes right up to her and kisses her and starts crying. Yeah, it says right here. Now, while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. So I don't know if he sang a song or if he just let out a yell or a good old, coyote yelp or what, but he kissed this woman and he started weeping. So this is a little bit different than how we do things in this day and age. But hey, it worked for Jacob. All the 12 tribes, spoiler alert, all the 12 tribes of Israel came from this man. He died being named Israel. Well, let's put that up there, actually. Yeah, he actually died being named Israel. His name was changed before he passed away. But he walked right up to this woman. She was a beautiful shepherdess, apparently. He had to have her. He kissed her. He raised his voice, maybe sang a song or yelled or something, and then he started crying. This apparently worked. I don't know if I would attempt this if I was a man, but hey, it worked for Jacob, so it can't be that bad. Let's see here. Oh, goodness gracious. But the problem is that Jacob was a trickster, but apparently his uncle Laban was also a trickster. So Jacob desires to marry Rachel. Laban says, oh, yeah, sure. But he tricks him and has him marry uh, her sister Leah, who's not quite as attractive, apparently. So it says here, now Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. So I'm not sure exactly what this means. However, It describes it as Leia's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. The JPS says it a little bit different. It's a little interesting. They're both interesting. So that's chapter 29, verse 17, the description of Leia and Rachel. It says here, Leia had weak eyes. Rachel was shapely and beautiful. So, apparently Rachel was very shapely and Leia had weak eyes. I guess Jacob was a bit of an eye man, and Leia had the weak eyes. Jacob gets tricked into marrying both sisters. So basically, Laban, the wedding night for Jacob to marry Rachel, they work out some sort of deal where he's going to work for 7 years to be able to marry his cousin and Rachel, supposedly. But in the night, let's just read the text. It's 29, chapter Genesis 29 from the Torah, verses 22 to 30. So it says here, now Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a wedding feast. Thus it came to pass in the evening, he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. So Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a handmaiden. Then it came to pass in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? Laban replied, it must not be done so in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and I will give you this one also for the service you will render me still another 7 years. Then Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. So he gave him his daughter Rachel as wife also. Laban also gave his handmaiden Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a handmaiden. And Jacob also went into Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served with Laban still another 7 years. Ay, ay, ay. So Jacob was just in the market for one wife, Rachel. He had her all picked out. He kissed her, wept, and let out a cry. But he ended up getting 4 women, 2 handmaids, and a bonus older sister, Leah. But this all worked out for good, you know. So Jacob, gets tricked by his tricky uncle, the trickster. There's a lot of tricksters in this story, it seems. Um, and then in the text around this point, it starts listing off some of the sons. We will go into this later. But Leah has sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Rachel was barren. Jacob says, give me children or I die. And Rachel can't give him children, but she can give her handmaid, and she will bear on my knees. So this is where this whole custom of having a handmaiden give birth, apparently on the knees of the wife. I'm not sure this has something to do with slaves and handmaidens, and it's a little bit odd for our culture, but it worked back then apparently for the most part with a little bit of infighting. So Bilhah, the handmaiden of Rachel, gave birth to Dan and Naphtali. Leah's handmaiden Zilpah bore Gad and Asher. And then we have another very odd thing here where Rachel sort of pimps out her husband. Yeah. Rachel sort of pimps out her husband, Jacob, to Leah. Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Thus Rachel said to Leah, give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? So Rachel said, not so. Let him lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. So she basically sells the rights to sleep with Jacob to Leah, who apparently was not at this current time sleeping with Jacob. I believe it's because she stopped bearing children. And now when Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrake. So she bought the right to sleep with her own husband from Rachel for some mandrakes. So, these are things that we don't really do much anymore these days in the U.S. They might happen a lot more in other cultures, still to this day. But in Western civilization, these things are a little bit foreign to us. Back then, apparently not. This is interesting, the dynamics between four wives and one husband. But she sells the rights to sleep with Jacob. So he lay with her that night. Thus God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. So all of a sudden, this worked. God opened up her womb and gave her a sixth son. Let's see. And what was his name? Oh, Issachar. Yes. And then she conceived again a sixth son. And his name was Zebulun. So this is amazing stuff. And afterward, she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. This will come into play later. So this is very interesting how this all works. A bunch of mandrakes are the price for sleeping with this man, Jacob. Jacob asked Laban to leave Mesopotamia and to go to his own country. This is where it gets very interesting. For payment to square this deal where Jacob's going to depart from Laban's territory and go to back to his homeland and leave Mesopotamia, Jacob asked for all the gray sheep and the spotted and the speckled goats. And Jacob installs a special breeding program, which is legendary to this day. This is going to be in chapter 30, verses 37 through, 43. So it says, now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar. And okay, so basically, Jacob gets to keep all of the gray and the gray sheep and the spotted and speckled goats. That's what Jacob gets to keep. And Laban gets all the rest, the pure white sheep and the goats that don't have spots or speckles. But Jacob is not just satisfied with leaving this up to chance. He wants all the money. So what he does is he installs a special breeding program. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of almond and chestnut trees, put white strips in them, tearing off the bark. So the white strips he had peeled appeared on the rods as spotted. Then he placed the rods he had peeled in the gutters of the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so they could conceive at the rods as they came to drink. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth speckled, spotted, and ash-colored speckled. And Jacob separated the male lambs and placed the speckled ram before the sheep, and all that were spotted among the male lambs. Then he separated for himself flocks by themselves and did not mix them with the sheep of Laban. And this really worked very well, apparently. Yes, because it was, he became very rich. He became extremely rich in actuality. And this worked. So it's amazing. It's sort of a magical breeding program. Laban and his sons get angry with Jacob, and Jacob flees at God's direction. 31:12 to 13. Yes. So God said, lift your eyes now and see all the male goats and the rams mating with the sheep, and the goats are speckled, spotted, and ash-colored speckled. For I have seen everything Laban is doing to you. I am the God who appeared to you at Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and made a vow to me. Now then arise, get out of this land, and return to the land of captivity, and I will be with you. Laban pursues Jacob, catches Jacob in Gilead. So Jacob headed to the mountains of Gilead. If you've ever heard of the balm of Gilead, isn't there a balm in Gilead? That's where it comes from. And I can attest that the balm of Gilead, it's simple. It's just a few ingredients. I forget exactly what they are, but it really works. I don't use trip antibiotic or anything, but this balm of Gilead is wonderful stuff. It'll clear anything up. The balm of Gilead is still available today. Laban catches Jacob in Gilead. And another really odd thing to the story is Rachel had stolen her father Laban's gods and hid them in a camel. And Laban searched everybody's tents, the handmaidens, Leah's tents, everybody's tents, and everybody's horses and their packages, and couldn't find his gods anywhere. They were on the camel that Rachel sat on, and Rachel told her father that she was having her manner of women, or her menstrual cycle, so she couldn't disembark off the camel. And this is how she got away with stealing her dad's gods, her papa's gods. I'm not really sure what's up with that. But apparently she did take these idols with her, which I don't think was probably the best idea. Stealing, first of all, and taking these idols from this land, transferring them to where this whole tribe of the 12 tribes of Israel is going. Not sure if there's any significance, but she did take these gods. Jacob and Laban make a covenant and share a meal. Jacob prepares to meet Esau and gifts him with many livestock. So basically, Esau and Jacob have not seen each other for many, many years. Jacob is very worried that Esau is going to still be angry, so he gets lots and lots of livestock and sends them with servants ahead to kind of soften up Esau. This is a wonderful account where Jacob meets Esau in chapter 33, verses 3 through 4. It's a beautiful account. It says here, he he then crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brothers, Jacob. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. They lifted his eyes and he saw all these women and children, and he asked, and it turns out that he gets to meet all of his nephews and nieces and everything, and this whole 12 tribes of Israel. It was a beautiful moment. So Esau forgave Jacob. They have this beautiful reunion. Then Dinah gets raped. Dinah gets raped, and by Shechem, the son of Hamor, who was like the king of the Hivites. And Simeon and Levi do something real tricky. They want to get their sister was Dinah. She got raped by this man Shechem. So what they do is they pretend to make a deal with them, basically a covenant, where they say, "Hey, you guys circumcise yourself. You worship our God, and you can marry our sister Dinah." They circumcise all the men of this of the Hivites, apparently, that live in this land of Hamor and Shechem. But while they're healing from the circumcision, they kill them all the men. At this point in time, Jacob commands his family to get rid of all foreign gods and purify themselves, and change their garments and make an altar to Yahweh. They also buried their earrings with the idols under the terebinth tree at Shechem. So this is interesting that Jacob has this desire to sort of purify and cleanse his clan. It's very interesting. This happens later in the history of the Israelites a few different times. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods in their hands and the earrings in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree near Shechem. And Jacob moves forward. Let's see. I believe then Rachel dies in childbirth and names her. Yeah, names her. Okay, so. Oh, you know what? I skipped a major part. Right on the way for Jacob to meet Esau, he wrestles with a man. This is when his name is initially changed to Israel. Now, some people say that Jacob wrestled God. Some people say that Jacob wrestled an angel. In Hosea, it's alluded to Jacob wrestling an angel or a messenger of God. It could be, you know, translated as an angel. In the text, it clearly says that he wrestled a man. Some people think that this was Jesus. Some people think this was an angel. Some people think this was God. Some people think Jesus is God. We're not exactly sure, but the text clearly does state that this was a man that Jacob wrestled. Um, yeah, so that's when Jacob's name is initially changed to Israel. Then he meets Esau, and then he gets rid of these gods. So after he wrestles this man in chapter 32, something seems to change in Jacob. He gets his new name. He wants to purify his clan, get rid of the foreign gods and the earrings and such. But God, in chapter 35, verse 10, clearly says, God said to him, your name is Jacob. Your name shall not anymore be called Jacob or Yaakov, but Israel shall be your name. God also said to him, I am your God. Increase and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land I gave Abraham and Isaac, I give this to you, and to your seed after you, I give this land. Then God ascended from him in the place where he talked with him. So Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked, a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering on it, and he poured oil on it. Thus Jacob called the name of this place where God spoke with him Bethel. And then Rachel died in childbirth. And this is so weird. Another weird part of this story. Rachel gets pregnant after this. And so Israel is now Israel. He's not Jacob anymore. Rachel, his beloved wife, gets pregnant again, but dies in childbirth, and her dying wish is to name her son Ben Onai. Israel, who used to be Jacob, ignores this dying wish and names the boy Benjamin. So that's really interesting. His beautiful wife that he adores has a dying wish to name the son who she dies giving birth to Ben Onai. And Israel ignores this and calls him Benjamin. Very interesting the way that things worked out back in the day. Reuben then lays with his papa's concubine Bilhah. Oof, not good. So here we got a synopsis of the children. Leah had Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Issachar and Zebulun. Zilpah, her handmaid, bore Gad and Asher. Rachel bore Joseph and Benjamin, and her handmaid Bilhah bore Dan and Naphtali. And then we have the whole Joseph saga. So Israel had these 12 sons, and he loves actually 11 sons at this point in time, I believe. He had these sons, a bunch of them, and yeah, well, I guess he would have had 12, according to the text. It's a little bit odd here, but starting in chapter 36 of Genesis, the Joseph saga begins. So Joseph is this beloved son. He's sort of snitching on his brothers and giving bad reports to his dad about them. His dad loves Joseph. So he's a bit of a teacher's pet here, it seems like. He gets a special jacket that really makes his brothers angry. They sell him into slavery. He goes to Egypt. They tell their dad that he was killed by a wild beast, and they bring him his special coat that he made him all bloody. And they tell their father Israel that his beloved son Joseph is dead, but in actuality they sold him into slavery. Joseph starts a hard journey. He gets sold into slavery, and then he ends up in Egypt, ends up a prisoner, gets a little bit persecuted there, but then rises to right underneath the Pharaoh in authority in Egypt. Somehow, miraculously, by the grace of God, a special anointing, he ends up um, in very much a position of authority in Egypt. And then what happens is the famine hits the land. where Israel and his sons live. And they go to Egypt to see if they can buy some food from the Egyptians. And here's Joseph, recognizes his brothers. They don't recognize him because he's probably dressed all up like an Egyptian or somebody in Pharaoh's court. And they actually end up bringing Israel to Egypt. And Joseph, with his position of authority, has all this food stockpiled in Egypt during the famine. He provides for his family and takes care of them. They have this wonderful reunion. And then Israel finally dies in Egypt. And one of the most beautiful parts of Israel's life is Joseph takes a giant caravan once Jacob dies of Israelites and Egyptians the whole way back to this cave that today is said to be. We still know where this place is at, apparently. It's in the West Bank in occupied Palestine. And it's pretty miraculous that Joseph left and took a whole caravan of chariots and to this cave in the field of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought years before. So supposedly, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel are all buried in this one cave. That's a very, very special place to Jews, all the Abrahamic religions, Jews, Muslims, and Christians. All of the nations that have come from Abraham hold this place in high regard. And there's still a special site there to this day. And it's amazing. But one other thing I will note about the burial of Israel, when he died in Egypt, but they took his bones once he died back to the land of Israel. One special thing is that it says that even like the elders and some of the top authorities of Egypt went on this journey. So this would have the Canaanites, when they saw this caravan coming, thought this was a band of Egyptians because that's what it looked like to them. So this is like a special journey with this dead body to go bury Israel, who was born Jacob, back in the land of his forefathers. So very interesting man. Hope that wasn't too boring for you. A little summarization of the life of Jacob. Shalom Aleichem. God be with you. Peace be upon you.